How you doing, Scarlett?
Hey.
Thank you for talking to a fellow gig photographer. I'm actually really
Yeah.
excited for this one. Um, so your new exhibition, your debut exhibition capture starts May 3rd,
Yeah.
May 5th, I believe, for the public.
May 5th. Yeah. Is that right, actually? May 5th open to the public.
Yep.
Thursday.
Yep.
I'm still jet lagged.
That's okay. I'm at home and I feel jet lagged.
Yeah.
So you're at the gallery there in Darlinghurst in Sydney. I'm going to go all the way back. What made you want to be a photographer?
Well, I always wanted to do something artistic, and I went to do a foundation course after school, which is basically where you try a little bit of everything. So even a bit of pottery. I wasn't very good at being a fine artist, but I was good at replicating what I see with art, like pencils or whatever. And then when I got a camera in my hand, I thought, ooh, this is pretty exciting. Just the feel of a camera. It's just quite exciting, quite a privilege to have something like that. And then it was obviously quite a long time ago. So it was film and processing and printing my own black and white. And that whole sort of darkroom experience is, it's the thing that I don't get time to do now, but it feels like a real indulgence that I would love to do. So I did that, and then I went to do a degree for 3 years in London doing photography, film and video. I didn't necessarily want to be a music photographer, but I stumbled into assisting and assisted for about a year, a music photographer, and then just started little by little doing a bit more on my own.
Yep.
And I was key with a few opportunities that presented itself. They sort of, like the first published image of mine was taken while I was assisting of Chris Cornell, and it ended up being on the back cover of a magazine in the UK, which opened the doors. As soon as you have a picture in a magazine, obviously that doesn't happen so much now either, but you were allowed to sort of introduce yourself. Hello, well, I've come to pick up a couple of copies of the magazine, and then you meet a few of the people, and then they think, oh, she's all right, So I got a few commissions that way, and then it just started rolling, really.
Who were you assisting?
I assisted Ross Halfin, who's a very rock photographer. Yeah.
Yep. He's the reason I now switched to Olympus, because I know he uses his Olympus for a lot of his travel stuff. So
amazing.
yeah, I use it for live now.
Wow. I've never, but yeah, that's cool.
I'm getting old and they're light.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So you're talking about film, and I try to say no offense to today's photographers, but I started on film as well. It was a totally different animal. Without sounding it negative, how do you think a lot of today's photographers, yes, how do you think a lot of today's photographers would go if they had a film camera and no Photoshop?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the sort of 20-somethings who are photographers are actually shooting on film.
Yep.
It is a real and that's where I say I'm quite jealous, where I know a lot of younger photographers who go and print color for the day, and it's a bit like a social, they meet up with other friends of theirs that are photographers and print their own stuff, and color printing is really hard, and it's not something I ever mastered. But I think there is a different way in the method of photographing if you started off on film, because obviously it cost a lot more money to shoot off reams and reams of film, and you had to be a little bit more selective or considered with your approach. And I think also not being so reliant on Photoshop, or sort of, there are times when people go, oh, you can sort it out later. And I think, well, I don't really want to sort it out later. I'd rather try it now. And so I prefer to do that. I get more fulfillment out of an image that's been got, naturally, without too much help. Yeah.
No, I agree. Like, I remember when I got my first digital, I thought, oh, this is amazing. And I walked out of a photo pit and then realized I had 1,200 photos to edit from 3 songs.
This is the problem. Also, I've just recently got an incredible camera that never misses a shot or never gets something out of focus, and it's a problem. Because there's too many. I'm used to culling quite a lot of it, but actually now it's like, oh, I need another hard drive.
No,
solutions.
I understand. I've actually been editing all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the most fun. I do miss the days of, you know, dropping the film at the lab, picking it up 24 hours later and making a selection, you know, and someone else is printing the shots. Now there's a lot more that we have to do as photographers, you know. Yeah.
And then the only thing I don't miss is trying to change a roll in the dark in a photo bit.
Yes.
That was never fun.
I think I could do it, actually. I think that was all right, but just those sort of like opening the film back, thinking there's no film in there, and then, oh no, or, you know, not knowing if you've got those shots or if it was well exposed is always, you know, that's a thing we don't have to worry about anymore. Now,
your exhibition is going to focus more on an Aussie flavour, so I can see Daniel Johns behind you there. So that looks like about 97 era Silverchair, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a nice way. Whenever I do any project or exhibition, I'd like it to have a reason, you know. And so actually, when Behind the Gallery approached me about doing this, I thought, well, actually, it's a really nice thing that my first picture printed was shot in Australia. And then actually thinking about it, I have shot a fair few Australian bands. And so I thought it's always hard to make an edit, but I thought, well, I'll choose some of the favorites and then add that Aussie slant to it, and hopefully that'll be good.
Now, also, you travelled out on Lollapalooza in 1994. So that would have been the Smashing Pumpkins, I think, on that one.
Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, yeah, and that's when I was assisting.
Okay.
It was then.
So I've just finished up 3 shows with the Smashing Pumpkins. So
oh yeah.
From the time that you worked with them there, like, what memories do you have of the Smashing Pumpkins in that era? Because that was really when they were just on the rise.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, sorry, I think I said no. So the big day out, I was shooting Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay,
they were there as well, and that's when I was assisting, but we were doing Soundgarden, and then I went to Lollapalooza. Is that what you were saying? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so oh God, I recently had to dig through all my sort of 1994 Lollapalooza shots and sort of scan all those old transparencies, and I just was such a big fan of the band as well. I had assisted on a shoot with them, and I thought, God, they look like a crazy bunch. And then and that was sort of just at the very beginning of the press campaign for Siamese Dream, and then I, you know, I went out to quite a few of the shows, like in New York, in Las Vegas. I can't remember the other one, but yeah, sort of popped in and out, and I mean, the shows were pretty intense, but amazing, you know. And it was just really brilliant times, and then I shot them again. Well, I've still keep in contact, you know. We still work together now, and yeah, it's just crazy that it's been such a long time, you know, nearly 30 years.
Yeah, tell me about some of the other photos you've got hanging behind you. Tell me about some of the other photos you've got hanging.
Well, the one right here is of Nine Inch Nails, that was taken before they were about to go on stage, and I like it because it was a genuine, like a peek of them before they go on stage, and they're covered in all this like white powder, which is probably talcum powder, but you know, to give the vibe. But I remember you know, they were being sort of told to look serious, you know, because I think everyone's just being normal, and then suddenly the camera's out, okay, hang on, you've got to look serious. So that's quite a funny memory. And then at the top, the Verve shot, I took that on Lollapalooza tour at the same time as shooting the Smashing Pumpkins, and it was again one of those pivotal images for me, because well, you'll appreciate this. I was shooting cross-process film, so it was like a negative film but processed as a transparency, so it gave funny colors. And then I had a fisheye lens, and I was bounce flashing, had no idea what was coming out, if anything at all. And it came out great, and I put it on a composite and sent it around to all the press officers, like anybody I'd met, press officers or managements, and their manager saw it and got straight on the phone and said, "God, we'd love to put this in our artwork for the new album." And I was like, "Whoa!" So that was amazing. And that, yeah, it was a great, at that time, really early days, to have in my portfolio. It was like, oh my God, is that the Verve? So that was a really important one in my journey, I guess. And then got the Powderfinger.
Powderfinger, yep.
So when I shot them, you know, we didn't know how huge they were, but I got to do a press session and pretty soon realized just how important they were over here, particularly, you know. So that was good. I chose a picture that was used for press because I thought it might be the more recognizable one, but we've got quite a few that were not in the studio, a bit more sort of relaxed and stuff. But it's so hard to make an edit on, you know, when you're faced with like 35 contact sheets, I've got to choose one image. It's really tricky, but anyway. And there's a shot just underneath them of the Mars Volta, and that's probably one of my favorite shots I've ever taken because they just look so cool. And it was in El Paso. We didn't know exactly where we were going to be shooting, but they were from there, so they had an idea of a few little spots, and there's like this amazing train track in the background, and just as we were shooting, the light was incredible, backlighting them from the sun. Perfect. And then a train rolling by, and I was like, oh, this is just too good. And you know, there's some pictures that you come away from or look back on after you've shot and you go, that just feels so amazing. Like for me, I'm just really happy with that one, you know. So that's my favorites. And then, I mean, you can't see all the pictures here, but I might as well talk about that. That's the White Stripes when they were recording at Toe Rag Studios in Hackney in London, and we did some shots inside the studio, and then there's like a sort of grotty alley outside, and I just thought, yeah, let's grab a few here. And I, you know, it's always tricky to make. Sometimes you think, God, how am I gonna make this look interesting? But I suppose they're quite photogenic, aren't they, musicians? A lot of the time. And even a sort of grotty old alley can look good when you've got Jack White in it.
Exactly. Now, with the way it is today, a lot of people think everything has to be technically perfect, where, you know, and you go in and you can make everything as close to technically perfect as possible with a computer. But for me, if I see something that's a little bit blurry in one part, like a guitarist's hand or something, but I still think it tells the story, I'll happily publish it. What about you?
Yeah, if it's got the vibe, and you know, I think I do like things to be sharp on the eyes. So, you know, I have missed stuff in the past, but yeah, I mean, if it still has, sometimes that just the movement that you get in the blur can just be an image in itself. So it wouldn't be the end of an image for me, but I think it is, if the eye isn't in focus, sometimes it can be a bit like confusing for the viewer, can't it?
Yeah. You're also teaching at a uni. Now, this is the thing I find really cool, is that it's not just DSLR, but you're also teaching about phone. Like how to use your phone for photography is great.
Well, you know, even photographers use their phone for a majority of day-to-day images, you know, certainly social media and stuff. And in lockdown particularly, I did some like teaching for, there's a sort of music college called BIM, and they'd cover lots of different modules. Like, it's not just about being a musician, but all the other aspects, you know, like the image and making videos, because they have, you know, that's it, we all have to do so many more jobs. So that was fun. I did a couple of rounds of teaching for them in person and then on Zoom, and the definitely did some like kids iPhone photography, adults ones, which was pretty much the same actually. But yeah, just you know, throwing a few things in that you might not think about, like, you know, one of my favorites is just turning your phone upside down and, you know, getting a different point of view. Yeah, so I do enjoy teaching. I'm not the best teacher, it's not what I do. I prefer taking pictures, but it's still nice to to connect with other people who are enthusiastic and share what you know.
Sure. Has there ever been any artist that you've started a shoot with and it just, be it personality or the vibe, and you put an end to it?
There's only been one where their vibe, and I probably shouldn't sort of go into too many details, but they were the singer of the band was in a pretty dark place, so that they were very reluctant to sort of try or do anything. But I think, I was very much of the mind that, well, there's literally nothing I can do. I'm here to do a job, and it's ultimately will promote your band. And he just wasn't capable at that time of sort of being anything other than how he was. So they weren't my favorite shots. They're
Sure.
not in the exhibition.
Sure.
But generally, I do manage to connect with everyone, and most people are pretty decent.
Okay, so for a young band up and coming, so we've both had the pleasure of working with bands that in that first 3 songs know how to play up to the camera. How important is that for a young band when they're in that first 3 songs with a photo pit full of photographers?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if they're a new band, then they might not have the first 3 song rule, but it definitely is going to gain the audience interest, isn't it? If something looks dynamic or like, what the hell, what's going on here?
Yeah.
There's definitely bands that I've seen and gone, who are they? Like Starcrawler, who I've not seen live, but any live image I see, I go, I'd love to see them live,
Yeah. And that's the thing for me. Like, if I'm with a new band and they say, we've never done this before, I say, go watch a Kiss video.
Yeah.
Because you'll watch the first 3 songs and the audience doesn't exist. It's all the photographers pretty much that exist for them. And that's how they get the great photos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you shot Kiss?
Many times.
Okay.
Yeah, they're my big number 1 band. Yeah.
So I've got a shot of Paul Stanley, but not in his full makeup.
That's cool. Yeah, and look, people like them and Alice Cooper and the more established artists know the value of those first 3 songs.
I mean, this is something that, it's a contentious one, because obviously there's a lot in the press at the moment about Marilyn Manson, but he is someone that I've shot many, many times and was always a very easy person to shoot because he was very aware of his image and how he looked. So for a photographer, anyone who does that, it makes, like even if there were, 3 or 4 shoots in a day, every photographer he would give a different look to. So, that was always quite a pleasure for me. Not that, we necessarily sort of shot the breeze about other things, but just visually.
Now, in the press release that came out, there's a really great shot of the Foo Fighters. What are some of your favorite memories of Taylor?
Well, the first time I shot the Foos, I think it was their first ever Reading gig that they did, in England. And so I shot them before Taylor was in the band, as well as while he was in, early days particularly. And I just, it was just their camaraderie, and that relationship between Dave and Taylor was pretty special, of course. And so I covered the Taylor Hawkins tribute gig, which was really emotional. Yeah. But it was an honor to be able to do that. And yeah, it was one that I won't forget.
Okay. Now, if you're only on a 3-song rule, so a lot of the times if you're established with the artist, you'll get more than the first 3. But if you're only on the first 3, do you go in with a game plan or do you sort of wing it?
So recently I shot My Chemical Romance at a big sort of stadium where I was actually shooting Placebo, who was supporting them. So I was shooting all of them and on the stage. But for My Chemical Romance, it was a 3-song thing, which actually I was only shooting for myself. But I still thought, I think it's like competitive thing. I'm like, I'll make sure I come back with the goods here.
Yep.
So I just basically shot the shit out of it.
Right.
Just, you know, actually the camera I had at the time was not the camera that I have now. It was more a portrait. I suppose for a number of years I wasn't shooting so much live stuff, and the camera that I had for portraiture was brilliant, but then it was just a bit too slow when it came to getting high action. And so I was also aware that I really needed to overshoot, because there was going to be a lot that I was going to be having to sift through. But I did come away with shots that I was happy with. And yeah, and they played I'm Not Okay as a second song, which is like, oh,
yep. Have you moved to the Z series?
Z9.
Yeah.
It's Z9 all the way for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I worked in a camera shop when they first got released, so I got to play with them quite a bit.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a, you know, but it is just the most incredible camera. Like it is just so good. It's the 3D tracking for me. It's the focus, you know, the focus is just insane. So it's, yeah, I'm very grateful.
So you talked about being on stage. I had to do that yesterday for a buddy's band. Have you ever tripped over a cable? Because I'm paranoid when I'm up there.
I'm so clumsy. Yeah, and I'm always really aware that I'm gonna just get in the way or trip over something, or not be standing in the place that, you know, I'm blocking the guitar tech's view, or, you know.
Yeah.
But I can't remember a disaster. I remember once being in the pit at Lollapalooza, in fact, and it was a really big pit, and in the middle there was like a drop, and I did fall.
Oh no.
Yeah, because you know you're doing the crab move, you sort of following, and then I just took a tumble. I was like, oh. And I definitely have had pit injuries where, you know, people crowd surfing and the foot goes in my head or whatever. But and I think I'm getting a bit long in the tooth for all of that. There are times when I think I just can't do that, or get covered in wee or whatever, you know.
Yeah. No, I had a Facebook memory come up the other day of a crowd surfer, and the comment was, "Oh, what a great shot!" I went, "Yeah." 5 seconds later, I got a boot to the face.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a hazard of the industry.
Absolutely.
Now, will there eventually be a plan to do like a print edition book or anything like that in the future?
I'd like to. That's the plan. I am going through the arduous task of digitizing my archive, and I've literally like just gone over the surface, and that's what I'm doing basically in my spare time, is sort of working through. Everything's nicely organized now, but I'm probably only done about like A to D of like, yeah, just the negatives. I'm not even talking about the transparencies, and then there's all the digital. So but it is the plan, and I feel like now that I'm sort of hitting 30 years that I qualified to do so, you know. I think for a long time I was like, oh, that's a bit like showy offy, but now I think, well, no, it's cool. And actually there are a lot of images from the past that take on new meaning as time passes, and I quite like that aspect. The nostalgia.
Yeah. There's some really good memories when you look back. Like, as I say to people, when I'm shooting a gig, it's more about making the memory than getting the shot for me. So
yeah,
you know, thinking about that particular moment, which is what a photo is meant to be. It's a moment. It's not meant to be perfect sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, how many photos will be on display when the exhibition opens?
I think there's 42. But I mean, I've had to do serious culling.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I find it so hard.
And will there be a plan to take this around the country at some point?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the reception is, but I'd definitely love to come back. I've had such a brilliant time in the few days I've been here. It's so good to be back in Australia. It feels much more fun than England.
We try.
Yeah.
I think Sydney would be a little bit wet right now, wouldn't it?
No, it's been amazing.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
Awesome. Okay, Scarlett, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. It's good to pick the brain of a seasoned photographer.
Yeah, it's great to be following you now. So yeah, it's
we saw a whole bunch of images coming from the weekend when I wake up.